years because of mistakes during the construction and prior to and also at the opening. And just to cite a few, at the opening of Chaplakok Airport in Hong Kong, problems with the baggage system, flight information display, cargo system resulted in 20,000 unboarded luggage and 40 days of downtime. Heathrow T5 in London faced similar problems with their baggage system, their security system, their parking system that led to both passengers and staff having trouble locating their car parks. There were long wait times for baggage due to clogged conveyor belts, and check-in counters had to be suspended. The check-in had to be suspended at its opening. Last but not least is the Berlin's airport. And this is a story of failure and embarrassment. Just before the opening date, inspectors reported some 120,000 defects, including fire safety issues, automatic doors that didn't open, sagging roofs, around 170,000 kilometers of cable installed in and around the airport were also found to be dangerously wired. In all, there were more than 500,000 problems to fix. And the Berlin airport finally opened in October 2020, 14 years after construction started. On these introductory notes and scene setter, allow me to introduce you to our ORAT expert today. Mr. Herbert Keffel is the head of Competence Center Operations, ORAT, and IT at Munich Airport International. Herbert is a seasoned aviation professional, project leader, and management consultant who knows how to guide and support large teams through complex challenges and lead them to success. He has led many ORAT projects around the world at, just to name a few, New Istanbul Airport in Turkey, Newark Liberty International Airport in New Jersey, and he is presently leading an ORAT project at the New Terminal 1 at JFK Airport in New York. So without further ado, let me give the floor to Herbert. Thank you. Herbert, you have the floor.
Yes. Thank you very much, Ramesh, for this introduction. And I hope that the audience is not scared away now, because you came literally with some of the most prominent failures in airport openings. I agree to that. There are many more examples. And this is exactly why we call for a structured approach to open airports. Munich has introduced this methodology some 35 years ago when we started our airport here. And since then, we extend this service as a commercial service to airports throughout the world. So far, we did some 40 plus ORAT projects throughout the world. I personally led 11 of them, including the one that Ramesh just introduced, which is a new terminal at JFK Airport. So let's dive into the presentation, please, and give me the next slide. So what I would like to achieve with you in this webinar is to guide you through the state-of-the-art methodology that has evolved over the last 30 years. I want to introduce you into the background and also the purpose of ORAT projects, the steps that we take from the very beginning until aftercare after the opening. And I also would like to give you a deep dive into the operational trial and the activation of the new terminal, and also how we support the operation in the first days after the opening. Next slide, please. And as I just said, I want you to understand the approach and to explore step by step what we do. I want also to give you some examples and practice insights from my end. And of course, I will be very happy to take your questions to give you a deeper understanding and also clarify what might be open to you. Okay, next slide. So what is ORAT? And why is it necessary to run an ORAT? ORAT is basically an acronym for Operational Readiness and Airport Transfer. And why would we do this? So first, of course, we want to make sure that not only the building is ready, which is concrete, steel, and glass, and a lot of systems, as we just learned from Ramesh, baggage handling system and other very complex systems that need to be ready. This is one thing, but also, and this is the source of a lot of airport opening failures, we want to make sure that also staff is ready and also procedures is ready. We have to see that if a new airport or terminal is built, you often have a technological gap of 30 or more years between systems landscape, between integration of mechanical and electronical systems. And you also have not only to build this and commission this, but also you have to take the people along the journey. ORAT is basically a big change project. We want, of course, with our methodology, with our structured approach, minimize the risk of incidents during and after the opening. Finally, of course, ensure a timely and successful opening. On-time openings are important because usually if you build an airport, not only you as an airport operator, but also all stakeholders have a business plan behind this scenario. And further delays can strongly affect the business plan for years, not only for the airport, but also for small businesses that counted to work there, etc. And Berlin, by the way, in my country is not only a big embarrassment, as Ramesh rightfully said, but also a big example where the ongoing delays, which summed up to 12 years, it's hard to believe, of course, shook the business plans, not only from the airport operator, but from a lot of businesses, from airlines who were affected. One airline even drowned over this, which was Air Berlin, to small businesses, which invested a lot of, for instance, equipment, etc., in a small restaurant that could not open for 12 years. This is simply a catastrophe for those people, and of course, a consequence. We want to avoid negative publicity. Next slide. And what are the benefits? I mean, yes, we want to have a smooth startup. We want to have an on-time opening. We want to minimize the risks of operational incidents. We want that, and this is the emphasis that I just explained, we want to have stakeholder staff. So all the different stakeholders from airlines, ground handlers, of course, concessionaires, and last but not least, authorities like the police, customs, civil aviation authorities that work there. We want to have them trained on their systems and the procedures, but also familiar with the airport structure or with the terminal structure. And we want during the project have a structured and clear stakeholder management and communication. So we want to take during this project that takes between 1 and 3 years, depending on the size of the airport or terminal, we want to take them along the journey. We want to change them from old to new. And of course, we want to update and optimize procedures, as I said, which might be 30 years old and worked for the old terminal or airport, but will certainly not work in a completely new and different infrastructure and systems environment. Next, please. And how do we start? You see these elements, these arrow-shaped elements, and these are the elements of an ORAT project. You don't necessarily need all of them. It depends on the requirements. But if you really have a fully fledged ORAT project, you start with a design review. You set up the project. You have an operational and readiness preparation phase. You have a phase which is familiarization and training. And I will come to all of these phases in detail. You have the core and the most important element of the ORAT process, which are trial operations. Then you have the operations transfer or the move from old to new. Then you have the opening support phase, which comes directly after the opening. And you have a post-opening support phase, which is optional, I would say. Okay, so the key actions during the design review, and this can happen in the design phase of the project, so long before the ground is broken and the first concrete is poured. Ideally, you help from an ORAT point of view, the designer or the design builder to design an airport or an airport infrastructure that is fit for purpose to avoid expensive mistakes. So what would you do here? You would first start to create a high-level operational concept so that you have something to work and plan along. How will you design an airport if you don't exactly know what capacities you are, what KPIs you want to meet? And of course, the input comes from the terminal or airport operator, and also from the key stakeholders, for instance, from the flag carrier of the country or the main airline. We want to review the planning prerequisites. So we want to make sure that the business model is suitable and that the KPIs and SLAs that the airport operator or terminal operator envisages can be met through the infrastructure that is planned. Of course, we want to plan, we want to assess the plans and designs against the requirements. Simple example, are the roadways large enough? Are the turning radius of certain curves appropriate for the biggest piece of equipment? Yeah. Are clearance heights under boarding bridges suitable for all vehicles that will operate at this airport, like passenger stairs or catering trucks? I've seen airports where operational procedures had to be changed because an unextended catering truck could not access a terminal because the boarding bridges, the fixed part of the boarding bridges, were not high enough. And of course, and this is something that ties into the business plan and the economical aspect of such a project, we want to freeze the design, which means that you will not accept any more substantial changes in the design, the more money you save. Because what really adds up cost to a construction project are continuous design changes. And the longer you wait for it, or the farther into the project they come, the more expensive they are. This is number one. And the second aspect is that you, of course, delay the opening with that. And we want to avoid this. And this is why we opt as an option to review the design from an operational standpoint before it's frozen. And this, as I said, happens, by the way, detached from the other ORAT project phases long before. So if, let's assume that an airport construction goes over 4 years after breaking the ground. Usually you have a 1 or 2 year design phase. What we recommend is that an ORAT expert or team of ORAT experts with operational experts reviews the design.
Par viser le design. Et par la suite, ils vont commencer à travailler sur la construction et après 2 ou 3 ans, ils commencent le projet. Et c'est l'autre phase, là où vous voyez le fait de mettre en place le projet, etc. Je vais vous montrer dans les diapos suivants d'autres exemples. Donc, nous pouvons déjà passer ces slides-là parce que nous avons déjà expliqué. Autre projet qui n'a pas été vu. Et vous voyez ici certaines parties verticales, là où vous avez des colonnes qui ne sont pas utilisées par personne à cause du fait que cette partie de ce monde, il y a des conditions cela est inutile. C'est pour cela ce qu'on doit faire et dans les étapes suivantes, dans les autres photos, vous allez voir d'autres photos du terminal et cela pourrait être vraiment très large parce que nous avons des cigarettes au niveau du sol. C'est une façon avec laquelle le design n'a pas été vraiment approprié. Dans la deuxième photo, vous allez voir le cas où l'opérateur du terminal a souhaité avoir une salle pour les artistes ou pour les personnes ils ont une perception et ils ont besoin d'un environnement vraiment très calme. Et au niveau de ce terminal, vous avez d'autres salles pour voir que tout le son à travers ce terminal sera reflété dans les plafonds et projeté dans toute la salle. Vous voyez, cette salle est magnifique, mais cette salle n'est pas vraiment en adéquation avec les personnes qui ont cette perception et qui doivent avoir des valeurs en commun. Diapo suivant. Et finalement, vous voyez ici, c'est quelque chose qui a été fait aux États-Unis. Sur le côté gauche, vous voyez ici les chariots qui sont dans le hall du check-in sans avoir un espace. Ils sont dans et dans le centre. Et dans la photo au centre, donc vous voyez des personnes qui sont au niveau de l'aéroport ces personnes-là et les entreprises n'étaient pas en mesure de leur donner et les conséquences que ces personnes-là qui travaillent pour ces services-là peuvent s'arrêter à ce niveau et leurs équipements dans le hall du check-in au niveau des dans la photo sur la droite, vous voyez ici le bagage dans le hall du check-in parce qu'ils n'ont pas stocké de l'espace et dans cette zone, vous pouvez voir tout cela. Diapo suivante. Et vous pouvez voir cela par le fait de changer le design, donner une certaine expérience à ces personnes pour qu'ils ne peuvent pas poster. Donc, nous allons assumer le fait que cela a été fait et après 2 années, cela dépend de la taille de l'infrastructure avec laquelle vous allez commencer. Et chaque projet avec lequel vous commencez, vous allez travailler sur les opérations et les projets. Vous préparez votre projet, vous le décommandez, vous organisez le comité de pilotage, vous allez définir les termes de référence pour chaque salle, vous allez analyser les structures et vous allez développer le projet en lui-même. Vous pouvez faire une analyse des parties prenantes parce que nous avons toujours plusieurs parties prenantes au niveau de cet environnement et avec un plan de communication pour ce projet, comment vous allez communiquer, comment vous allez engager vos parties prenantes et quel type de format, quel type de gouvernance vous allez en avoir pour la réunion. Est-ce que cela est possible au niveau de cette culture? Est-ce que vous écrivez des PV? Comment vous allez les distribuer? Vous allez développer un projet et essayer de l'organiser. Il ne s'agit pas d'un effort supplémentaire de l'équipe. Donc, vous allez avoir une centaine de personnes pour un nouvel aéroport et cela coûte de l'argent. Et si vous vraiment vous allez avoir besoin de la transformation, vous allez avoir besoin du catering, des poissons, des boissons, des aliments pour ces personnes-là et vous allez être vraiment prêt pour cela, définir le budget et considérer le budget que vous allez en avoir besoin dans 2 ans. Et comme chaque projet, vous faites une opportunité des risques le développement de l'atténuation et par la suite, vous allez préparer un projet externe. En détail, vous commencez avec le statut actuel, quels sont les documents que vous en avez besoin? Est-ce qu'il y a des documents qui sont disponibles? Est-ce que j'ai des indicateurs clés de performance? Est-ce que vous regardez l'intégration des parties prenantes pour le projet? Vous allez avoir les parties prenantes qui sont au niveau de votre projet. Cette participation est un fardeau pour eux parce qu'ils sont toujours au niveau de l'opération et avec leur système de gestion et ils doivent l'utiliser et gérer cela jusqu'au projet, ce qui est vraiment un fardeau additionnel et vous allez leur expliquer et être conscient du fait qu'ils ont un avantage, qu'ils vont en tirer. Ils doivent comprendre les attentes qui sont considérées au niveau du projet ainsi que les opérations dans le futur et pour les organisations futures et pour voir ce qui se passe. Et par la suite, ils souhaitent analyser tous les documents qui sont disponibles pour avoir une vue d'ensemble sur ce qui est disponible, ce que vous avez besoin de faire et vous avez besoin de l'organisation et de définir, premièrement, définir ensemble les services que vous allez en avoir ensemble et par la suite, quelles sont les autres sources. Et par la suite, vous allez avoir le client. Ce que nous souhaitons aussi faire au niveau de notre projet, c'est une affaire assez complexe et entre-temps, nous essayons d'utiliser le statut actuel et quelles sont la plateforme que nous allons utiliser pour l'intégration et la collaboration du travail. Nous avons aussi le tableau de bord et la communication. Et je passe au diapo suivante. Lorsque vous allez mettre en place votre projet, il s'agit d'un exercice interne. Vous allez choisir le projet avec les parties prenantes et ensemble avec eux, vous allez réviser les documentations opérationnelles, vous allez vérifier tout ce qui se passe au niveau de la phase de l'installation, la disponibilité et vous allez évaluer le côté de l'instruction et bien sûr, ce qui est en train de faire au niveau du terminal et au niveau de la construction, et ce qui est vraiment très important, vous allez vous allez avoir une multitude de systèmes qui sont interconnectés et vous souhaitez avoir une personne qui va assister le projet, l'intégrateur de système qui va s'assurer que tout le système parle ensemble et cela est très important pour ce projet. Avoir toutes ces informations de la part de DCS, de la compagnie aérienne, et parler avec le système de l'adresse publique adresse et le prestataire serait vraiment en mesure de traiter le système d'accès ou de contrôle d'accès. C'est un grand travail qui devrait être fait et cela demande des experts informatiques au niveau du projet. Vous développez la première partie, vous connectez avec des personnes, ils vont travailler au niveau de ce projet et finalement, j'arrive au diapo suivant pour organiser le travail ensemble, pour progresser et définir les OSP et les plans de réponse. Vous allez avoir des groupes de travail et diapo suivant. Ce processus n'est pas en relation avec cela et vous allez échanger toutes les informations au niveau du coprocessus et il n'est pas limité avec ces processus-là, la facilitation, la sécurité et par la suite la partie commerciale. Cela dépend de la nature du terminal et de l'infrastructure. Vous pouvez avoir beaucoup plus d'avantages. Nous avons des coprocessus et par exemple le catering, etc. Mais il s'agit d'un paysage au niveau du terminal et cela dépend aussi du projet. Ce que nous allons faire au niveau de cette phase, c'est avec toutes les personnes, avec les autorités et probablement les opérateurs, nous allons définir les processus au niveau de l'infrastructure qui a été construite et ces processus sont des documentations, ils sont documentés d'une façon appropriée et arrangée au niveau de la documentation qui commence principalement avec un concept de l'opération et cela est en relation avec les SOP et nous avons besoin d'un plan de réponse pour les urgences, pour les réponses d'urgence, etc., etc. Et parfois, fois, vous avez besoin du fait de parler avec les parties prenantes pour travailler sur les instructions. Et cela serait vraiment très utile si vous avez besoin d'une nouvelle infrastructure et essayer de définir les instructions qui seront faciles à comprendre et tangibles. Et les personnes dans le futur seront en mesure de comprendre tout cela. Et nous allons être menés à vous allez faire voyager ces personnes et ce processus, vous allez avoir la gestion des opérations et de la part des opérateurs des aéroports et de la part des autorités. Ils vont définir le processus et le point d'un point de vue opérationnel et d'une certaine perspective. Et cela devrait être développé et traduit en formation. Les personnes sur terrain et qui vont faire des opérations vont comprendre ce qu'ils vont faire. Et un autre aspect, et avec tous ces projets que nous avons avec notre équipe, nous allons soutenir le développement de l'organisation et nous avons besoin de développer ou définir une structure opérationnelle qui serait vraiment différente de celle qui est déjà mise en place pour les anciens terminals et des anciens aéroports parce qu'il s'agit d'une nouvelle fonctionnalité et à partir de cela, vous allez définir les compétences et vous allez avoir les descriptions des postes. Et dans cette zone de ce projet, vous pouvez aussi définir quel type de services vous allez insérer, que sont les services qui vont être au niveau de votre projet oral à New York, vous allez avoir le climat pour définir vos équipes et pour, par exemple, la demande de produits pour le service de sécurité. Ce sont les choses que vous souhaitez faire et vous souhaitez avoir au niveau de votre projet. Maintenant, nous passons à donc, SAM, c'est pour la familiarisation. Cela veut dire qu'il s'agit de la familiarisation de toutes les personnes qui vont travailler au niveau du terminal. Avec une nouvelle infrastructure, vous allez avoir des outils pour le terminal pour voir le nouveau. Donc, vous allez avoir deux nouveaux aspects. Il y aura beaucoup plus de nouveaux systèmes et le projet de construction va avoir des formulaires de formation. Vous allez définir ceux qui vont être disponibles pour cette formation et que cette formation sera fournie et que tout le monde serait vraiment disponible là où vous allez commencer votre infrastructure. Et dans cette zone, nous allons évaluer les parties prenantes et vous allez avoir la base de cette formation et vous allez développer un concept pour toute cette formation. Vous allez coordonner la participation et vous allez aussi avoir le plan général. Il faut former des personnes lorsque vous commencez. Il n'y aura pas une personne qui va essayer d'avoir les opérations s'ils n'ont pas reçu les formations adéquates. Et nous allons voir le troisième niveau de cette phase. Ils vont évaluer la formation des parties prenantes. Les parties prenantes sur terrain auront besoin d'une formation interne pour le processus, un nouveau processus. Cette formation est-ce que je peux avoir la diapo suivante? Le concept de familiarisation avec la nouvelle infrastructure. Nous allons avoir 20 à 30 personnes. Nous allons avoir aussi un terminal et ces formations sont fournies au niveau de vous allez avoir une instruction à la classe avec les points du nouveau terminal et vous allez avoir un tour au niveau du terminal.
they would, together with you, explore the construction site. At this phase of the project, which usually starts like, I would say 9 months before the opening, of course, not everything is ready. There's still construction going on. But usually at this phase of the project, everybody will be able to see where the new check-in desks are or where the staff entrance is. And the focus here is to familiarize people with their personal future work environment. It's not necessarily a terminal tour. It's more or less a familiarization with the new setup and operation that these people will be faced with. And it basically starts with the staff car park. How do I get from the staff car park to the staff screening point? How do I get to my break room? How do I get to my workplace, etc., etc.? So something that is pretty new that we implement now is that we do virtual walkthroughs, so that you, on top of these physical walkthroughs, you have an AI, or at least with a digitalization software created walkthrough through the terminal, where employees can take the virtual tour on a PC. This is something that we implemented already, and will also deploy in our recent ORAT project that we are working on. Another very important phase here is that you create your own training material, for self-studying, maps, floor plans, DVDs, etc., etc. As I said, we need to coordinate the O&M training, so the operations and maintenance trainings that are delivered by the vendors. For instance, the CTAL systems have to be trained on. The baggage handling system, very complex. You have to have a maintenance training, but also an operations training for this. And the ORAT team usually sorts out who is being trained on what, and also delivers schedules for this, so that everybody is trained in time, that he can participate in the further project, which mainly is then trials. And the usual concept, of course, is that you do train the trainer, because not only one people or one group of people can do this, but you want to train trainers who then trickle down and cascade the training down into your organization. Next slide, please. Again, this software that we use enables us to register, self-register people. So there's a portal where you can register for your walkthrough or for your FAM training or for any other training. And also the system, and you see here a display, creates dashboards so that you can see who has received the training and how far are we with the training. At this particular screenshot, you see that we had an achievement of 78% of all organizations and staff were trained. So you have dashboards first for yourself to control the project, but also for informing with at a glance your management and the management of your client. Okay, next slide, please. And as I said, we use, and you see on the top left picture, a camera setup with a person who digitalizes and virtualizes a terminal. This was done in Munich because we just have a terminal extension here. And the big screen that looks so fancy and colored is how the raw material looks like. I cannot exactly plain white looks like this, but this is the source and the raw material for creating digital walkthroughs. Next slide, please. Now comes, for me, the most important phase of an ORAT project. You cannot skip other phases, but you can deprioritize them if necessary. But what you cannot deprioritize are trial operations. Trial operations is basically simulating the future operation in the almost ready terminal. And basically it's about preparing a trial concept and schedules, and mainly scenarios which are like a script of a movie. You want to source and coordinate trial material and services. You have to develop a trial schedule. You have to have a schedule that is running on these systems, because basically you play operation. You want to coordinate and execute the trials, which is a huge effort. You also want at a certain point involve the public as trial passengers. And most importantly, you have to evaluate and report on trials, which is basically reporting open issues and the results, and follow up on these open issues so that you have progress with your project. And let's go on the next slide for the details. The trial preparation, the trial concept is basically the framework for the total trial program. So what do I want to achieve with trials? How many trials do I need in my environment, and what trials? This is set out in a concept. To produce this takes usually 4 to 6 weeks. Then once all this is agreed, and during the concept phase, you also want to involve the stakeholders, because airlines might have special requirements. Authorities might have special requirements for certain trials. For instance, they might want you to trial a terminal evacuation from a safety standpoint, or security authorities, police might want to trial what happens if a passenger blows through the SS security lanes, yeah, without being checked properly. Yeah, you want to test the fire alarm, and what happens, how do staff behave if there's a fire alarm in the building. All this has to be trained, of course, before, but in the trials, you want to have this in trial scenarios. During the trial preparation, so after the concept phase, you develop trial scripts to ensure that all scenarios and all requirements from stakeholders are incorporated within the trials. Yeah, and basically it's a playbook, like a movie, for that day. And a trial day usually takes 4 to 5 or 6 hours, where you rehearse different scenarios. For instance, like in the first phase of the trials, you come with check-in only, baggage handling only, and other areas like public transportation. And in the further phases of the trials, you have an integrated trial phase where you put all this together, and we basically play real operation. Yeah, you have passengers with bags. You need trial bags for this. Coming into the terminal, they have a flight booking. They approach a check-in desk, they check in their bag. Sometimes there's even problems that booking cannot be found, and all this can be provoked in the scripts, or other things that somebody comes with a weapon to security. And then we want to see how people react and how they use the systems and infrastructure. And this is exactly what we do during the trial execution. Depending on the size of the infrastructure, you have between 30, 40 to 70 trial days. So this phase can easily last several months, because you will only execute 2 trials per week. For what reason? First, you need to prepare the trial and debrief the trial, also physically. Yeah, you need to coordinate with construction so that you don't get across with construction activities. You need to involve stakeholders and also vendors and construction in open issues that you found, and ask them to fix them as soon as possible. And this happens during the trial evaluation phase, where properly debriefing and reporting is done, and that another part of the ORAT organization picks up and follows up on these open issues that you categorize in priorities, so that everything that is really necessary for day one works. Yeah? And in this phase of the project, there's no room for failure, in order to prevent the situations that Romesh explained in his introduction. So you want to make sure that the baggage handling system works. You want to trial it from an operational point of view. Yeah. Usually in these projects, we have between 2,000 and 4,000 trial bags that you have to procure. They are filled with clothes and books, and sometimes even with trigger plates for systems like guns, etc. So that you use these bags not only to test and trial the baggage handling system, but also the further processes like loading them into containers and carts and bringing them down to the ramp, because you also simulate aircraft loading and unloading, and even passenger boarding the aircraft or not. And at certain point, you even want to ask the flag carrier or the most prominent airline to provide an aircraft or two for trials, which usually works, and they're happy to do this. But all this has to be prepared and requires a proper planning. Next slide, please. Again, we use a digital platform to manage trials, to manage the trial plan and trial delivery, to register participants. Here you see a trial where we had 940 participants, so 940 public participants, which were trial passengers. Yeah. So here you see that not only you can manage the participants who can register online. Yeah, you just send out links over, for instance, social media, and people can then register with their name. They are then welcomed at the trial. They get a flight booking, sometimes even upfront per email, and then you would execute the trial and document everything in your dashboards, including the open issues and the trial results. Next slide, please. These are just some impression of trials that we did. You see staged trial bags that are used for check-in or in the baggage handling system. You see baggage operations, etc. You see systems, monitor systems that are being tested and trialed. And you want to integrate everything in a way that it's like in real operation. But of course, during trials, you see that things are not working. The public address system, the automatic public address system, doesn't display the right announcement, or the announcement has to be changed because not all operational requirements are met, or not all languages are available. And these are the things that you only realize and determine when you do thorough trials. This is why I suggest to never compromise on trials. You can cut all parts of the project, but not this. Because this basically is the final rehearsal before kicking off the operation. Next slide, please. Then when we come to an end with the trial phase, that usually we conclude, depending on the nature of the project, 2 or 3 weeks before the opening, because what do you want to do then? First, people have to rest a little bit, but not all, because good parts of the team will prepare, or not prepare, but will prepare the execution of the operations transfer, which can be a move from one airport to the other one, or from one terminal to the other one at the same airport, depending on scenario. But also, you have a very important phase in a project that we call security sweep. It's basically activating the landside airside boundary in the terminal. This has also to be considered and planned, and it's a huge effort. But once all this is done and the terminal is cleaned, usually you have to have a final deep cleaning of the terminal. You have to provision all the concessions with material and goods. You then start the operations transfer. But of course, this also has to be planned well ahead of time. You start this half a year before the opening. You have to develop a cutover concept. Do I have a soft opening over several weeks or months, or do I have a hard cut over? Yeah, I prefer hard cutovers from one day to the other, but of course they come with a lot of risks that you have to manage. You have to develop a logistics plan with all stakeholders. So you want to know who is moving what and when. You have to define loading and unloading zones then, and manage their usage, their utilization, so that people use these loading and unloading zones in a coordinated fashion, so that not 5 people or 5 companies and trucks want to use one zone at a time. Yeah, this cannot happen. So you need to tactically organize and manage this move. Yeah, you need to coordinate building protection measures. You want to protect stairwells. You want to protect passenger elevators who are made of glass and stone and steel from being damaged by moving activities. And you want to prepare and support the stakeholders with their transfer activities. Next slide, please. And this, as I said, starts with a proper concept and concept of transfer, but also a volume estimation, a planning of the transfer routes. Yeah, you want to have, if it's a longer move, as we just learned earlier, I organized the move in Istanbul, which was, by the way, the biggest move in mankind. Never in mankind was so much material and people moved from one place to the other. Yeah, you want to coordinate the usage of the roads. Will they be closed for a certain point in time? Do I need technical services on the way, which can be 40 kilometers? Yeah. And we had these. We had really, like in a Formula One, we had maintenance services every 5 kilometers to stand by and help broken down trucks, which was not necessary, but we prepared for this. So you also want to find out the proper route so that everything is cleared by height, yeah, so that you don't get stuck under a bridge or something. So this has to be done. Also, you have to tender logistic services. You need moving companies and trucks. You have to prepare this. You have to make sure that they are available and fulfill your requirements. Next slide. And then you, as I said, you plan the actual move, which is having a slot system where every little move has its own window of time, location, and also a route. Yeah. So you have a moving slot schedule. You have sometimes even a movement tracker. I'll show you something later, where we pinpoint online all trucks. And I can show you an example on the next slide if we go there now. So this is, again, you manage the operations transfer online with a digital tool. And as you can see it here, to manage, for instance, you see it on the left and right pictures on both. Manage the loading and unloading areas for your move. And also you want to progress and real-time monitor the moving activities, mainly the moving trucks. Yeah. And can we have the next slide? So these are some impressions of the move of Istanbul. On the top left, you see the route from the old to the new airport. So basically from Ataturk, which was a city airport, to the new airport, which is off the coast of the Black Sea. It was a route of 40 kilometers, and you see some little elements on the roadway, and all these are flags of trucks who had GPS transponders in their truck, and we could pinpoint them in a control center so that we knew who was where at what time with what shipment. Yeah. And of course, you need a logistics system to manage this. And you see that we had to move everything. We had even to move the buses. Passenger buses cannot go by long distances because they are under motorized. They cannot go 40 kilometers on a highway. It's not possible. Yeah, they are there for small distances, and they have usually very weak engines. Yeah, and you. Okay, and you also see on the pictures the unloading of special equipment like aircraft tugs, yeah, and a lot of moving trucks. And on the very left picture, you see this is something that is very special at an airport movement, an airport transfer. You see, and this is also what we organized together with ATC. You see the movement of aircraft from the old to the new airport. So in Istanbul, due to the nature of the schedule, some flights, not all, had to arrive in that very night, in that move overnight at the old airport for tactical reasons. And we had to move them over to the new airport. And ATC figured out like a special route that you can see it's a little bit curved to have more separation between the aircraft. And we moved over, I think, like 25 aircraft in that night. They had a separation only of 4 minutes or 5 minutes, and the flight time was not even 15 minutes. But this is how we did that, yeah, in that very night. Okay, let's take the next slide. And then we have these phases that I assigned as opening and post-opening support. In this phase, you want to make sure that in the first day of operation, when you start, that there is people on the ground, and basically it's the ORAT team, of course, and also it's going to be people, super users and trainers that were along the project from all stakeholders. And we want to monitor and evaluate and assess the daily operations from day one. We want to see what is good, what is bad, who needs support. We want to still, as in trials, track and follow up on open issues, because they will come. Yeah, they will come. You want to shadow manage key operational staff so that they, who might not be super familiar with everything, because what I just gave you from a classroom perspective, of course, comes with a lot of shortfalls. You have stakeholders that are not able to provide all staff to trials and to familiarization. So you want to help those stakeholders during the opening, and usually you know exactly who is prone to have issues during the opening, and then you assign special experienced people from your team to help them in their daily operation. Yeah, you hands-on support these stakeholders, and also what you want to do is in a second step, these, depending on how long the opening support is, it's usually between 2 weeks and 4 weeks, where you want to make sure that everything is working by the book, and the book is what you developed in your project, so the target procedures. But sometimes it turns out that there is still more potential to be more productive, to increase quality. And this is then what I call post-opening support. You review the operations and define improvement measures. Measures where stakeholders or you as an airport operator could improve your operation, could be more efficient, where interfaces can be managed in a better way. Yeah, this is basically the phase where you start refining and improving your operation. And then you have a new running airport and terminal after a long, long project. And these are my 2 cents on ORAT. Yeah, so this is what we just had. I mean, you, as I said, you support and shadow, you monitor everything you do, and this is, well, this is what I did not tell you. Of course, you have the task as an ORAT project leader to submit a final ORAT report to your client. Yeah, you assemble a report where you again set out the project as it was. Yeah, not only in theory, as you just saw here in my presentation, but how it was really. Yeah, what were the shortfalls? What were the lessons learned? Where we had to interfere and change the approach, etc., etc. And this is then part of the final report. Okay.
Thank you, Herbert.
You're most welcome.
Thank you very much for this very informative session on the ORAT. And I'm sure that there will be, and there are questions already that I can see in the chat. I don't know if you can read it, Herbert.
No,
okay. So the question is from Farid Malek. Could you please elaborate on specific elements such as VGDS, airbridge, positioning trials of the stand nose wheel? It's quite a technical question. How do these elements integrate into the overall operational and efficiency of airport ground handling?
So these are pretty complex systems. The VDGS, for instance, nowadays is a system that is highly linked to, of course, different traffic management systems. It's in the meantime also comes with functions like the RITS, which is a ramp information display, where you can display information to the loading teams, like remaining ground time, like other information. And at first, by the way, like all systems, you want to make sure, and this starts early into the project, that the systems that are provided, they come off the shelf for companies like SafeGate, which is one of the core providers, as you all know. And what you do during the ORAT process is customizing this as per the needs of the infrastructure, the airport operator, the operational scenario, and mainly also the stakeholder requirements. Ground handlers might want to see certain information, and you as an ORAT leader or as an ORAT team want to make sure that together with the client, which is the airport operator who pays for all this, and the vendor, for instance, let's make up an example, which is SafeGate, that these integration work is done and also this customization is done. Same for the passenger boarding bridges. There's also usually a big deal of customization depending on the size of the ramp stand and the aircraft types that will be handled there. And all this is done during the preparation phase. Once all this is set out, you usually have so-called factory acceptance test, where you are either on site in a laboratory or at the vendor site when you come to passenger boarding bridge, and look if what you ask for customization is really implemented. Then the next stage is the installation. Of course, then there are technical tests. Is everything working properly? Is it working from a technical point of view? Does data connection work? And then, and this is, I think, the core question for ORAT, are these things working from an operational standpoint? Yeah. So if the aircraft approaches, and we usually simulate this with cars, approaches the ramp stand, is it captured by the VDGS? Are the proper information displayed? Are all the systems, also the systems in the airport operation center, talking to each other? Yeah, etc., etc. So yeah. This is something that you want to test. Yeah, and of course, we talk about passenger boarding bridges. You want to make sure that they are working properly. You will have mock-ups, aircraft mock-ups to train and test. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Herbert. We have another question. It is in French, so I will translate that. How do we integrate the ECDM, that is the airport collaborative decision making, in the ORAT process? So the ACDM, if it's already in place, you just take it over and adapt it into the system landscape. Yeah. If it's new, I would say it's an entire project. An ACDM is a huge project to implement together with stakeholders, that is then a side project that also ties into ORAT, because obviously you have to take all stakeholders on the way. It's a huge change for airlines, their organization, but also for ground handlers, right? So the ACDM, if it will be implemented from scratch, is as I said, an isolated project, but it has ties to the entire ORAT project. Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Herbert. I don't see any question, but I have one for you both. Please. In terms of timeline, maybe you can remind all the participants and remind us about what sort of timeline are we talking for the start of the project, and is it related to the size of the project, and how does this work? So it's not, when it comes to the size of the terminal or airport, it's not a big deal if you have a 20 million airport or a 45 million airport, because the trigger for the time that you need and also the size of the team that you need is more by complexity, yeah, and range of services. So if you have an airport, if you have a terminal, let's see a terminal or terminal extension, it's a project that requires probably between 5 and 10 people over the course of 1.5 to 2 years. The Istanbul scenario that I did was another animal. This ORAT project was nearly 3 years, and it covered everything from the fuel farm to catering to cargo and the terminal. And I guess that most of you have seen this airport. It's a very big airport, and it certainly was the most challenging thing that I did in my career. In fact, the complexity triggers the size of the team, but also the length of the project. Yeah, but sometimes, and we have to be real, clients call you because ORAT is depending on culture, and this is why I'm really happy to bring the message here forward. ORAT is not a big deal when you plan for an airport, depending where you are.
And all of a sudden, somebody realizes we need somebody who gets this machine started. And then you are asked to perform an ORAT where you have, by the book, not talking about further delays, 10 months time for an airport. And we are just bidding for such an endeavor. Then you have to change your approach. You have to prioritize certain phases, but also you want to have a higher level of flight in your project, because you simply cannot go into every detail and focus. And this is then what I usually do, and this is pretty successful usually. Focus on the fact that not everything will be perfect. And this is why you have an emphasized opening and post-opening support, holding hands, having super users who prevent the worst. Let me put it like this. And usually this works very well. We had this sometimes. There's always a way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Herbert, I have my colleague, Stefan, who has a question. Maybe I'll give him the floor.
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes, Umesh. Do you hear me?
Please go ahead with your question.
Okay. Thank you very much, Herbert, for your presentation, which
You're welcome.
really talks to us in Reunion, where we are in the middle of the opening of a new terminal, and we applied the ORAT process. I just have perhaps some witnesses or I don't know, also some questions concerning the different steps you described. First of all, concerning the design review, when you showed the picture of the smoking area with no roof, don't you think that it is the job of the architect to think about this?
Absolutely.
I'm on the operation at my airport, for example. So we gave what we wanted, but at the end, you are not taking into account all the environment of the airport. So concerning the smoking area, isn't it the job of the architect?
Absolutely. Stefan, you take the words out of my mind. It is the job of the architect and the designers, and also of not other things of functional planners. But sometimes these people don't think about everything. And this is why experienced people can tell them straight away, hey, you need a roof there, because people, and sometimes it's also about experience in human behavior from airports. Yeah, people will not stand, at least not in the east coast of North America, in where you have hot summers and extremely cold and wet winters. They will not stand in the middle of nowhere with their cigarette. Yeah, what they did, in fact, they were, and what is in America very popular, you have curbside check-in counters. They are basically outside of the terminal. It's basically a drop-off outside of the terminal under a roof. And what they did is lounging around these curbside check-in counters and spilling everything on the floor, including their fast food packages and their cigarette butts. And when staff came to open their counters, they had to clean up first. So, but I agree with you. It's the designer who should, so the architect and the designer who should take care that this doesn't happen. But I can tell you, Stefan, this happens everywhere. And also, there should be a functional program saying that, we need not only working areas, but also we need staff rooms, we need changing rooms, sometimes showers, depending on regulations and requirements. Yeah, and or things like you need a special area where you can store wheelchairs if you don't want to have them standing around the terminal. Yeah, I can tell. I saw new airports where even the clocking machine, so the machine where people swipe in and out their card, was on a passenger seat and plugged into an outlet that is for passengers' phone to be charged. Yeah,
because we are facing the same problem. We are facing the same problem at the moment with the extra size luggage, oversized luggage. Well, the problem we had is all the design was made before COVID, and then when COVID started, everybody was at home, and we had to give that like a final approval in 3 weeks. So of course, what you said is very important. Ramesh, if I could have, I also have other comments if I can. Is it possible or not?
One last one from you, Stefan, because we need to wrap up. I have other questions from the audience also. Another one.
Okay, just the last one, very, very quick. When you talk on step 2 of the operational readiness preparation, what we faced, and my colleague Marie, who is online as well, she's in charge of ORAT here. What we faced with the external, but also the internal stakeholders, is the lack of projection. It's very, very hard to explain to people that you have to how it will work when the building is not made. We are not technicians, we are operational people, so it's hard for us to read the paper, to read the plans. So this was a very, very tricky part of our ORAT program. It was hard to involve people early, so as a consequence, people reacted only at the end, very at the end, when it was built, when they could imagine themselves. So do you have these kind of problems in other airports as well?
This is a problem in every ORAT project, and we just try to overcome this in the JFK. So in the New York project that I have at JFK Airport, you usually have plans. So the architectural drawings, it's not just a drawing, it's a database model, a Revit model, where you have all information about the room in a database. You do not see only the drawing, but you have all components of the room in a database.
Is it the BIM? Is it the BIM?
Exactly, something like a BIM. And there are systems that can take the BIM data and create a 3D model out of it, so that you can really walk people through. We want to try this in the project that we have now, in order to make it, and I completely see your point, to make it more tangible for people to see where they will be working. Yeah, like videos or virtual walkthroughs. Yes, I agree with you. But this is then the task of the work stream lead. So, for instance, the airside process. Yeah, you have a core process airside, and the ORAT team provides a core process lead for this airside process, and his task is really to sit with people and get their commitment, and also take them on the journey. And I know that these people have everything in their head but ORAT, because they usually run an operation at the old airport, at the old terminal, and the art is to balance exactly this. So the requirement of the project and their commitment into the present operation. But I agree with you. It's tough to get people committed to something that is not tangible yet.
Yeah. But I agree. Yeah. Yes, thank you. I agree. Never compromise on trials. We are at the moment fighting a lot with trials, because we are going to open now the departure side, and the technical part, they want to go fast. And they want like a trial one day and the next day we open, and we are fighting operations. We are fighting to delay it, and it's a big pressure for everyone. So thank you for this.
Yeah. I can tell you that it's necessary, and it's really helpful to have a proper plan in place already, like 2 years before. So it's basically the ORAT schedule, 2 years before the opening, and saying that I need these 30 or 40 trials, else I cannot guarantee a timely and proper and seamless opening. And if then somebody starts to try to compromise, you have to, and this is exactly what Ramesh said on his first slide, you have to tell them, and I did this. I was already at ministers of transport and chairman of airlines that invited me to tell them what happens if we open now. And then I said them, look to Hong Kong, look to London, look to this and that airport. That is the experience, and it happened. Why? Yeah, that was the reason. Do you want to take this risk? No. Istanbul, for instance, you might know this. It opened exactly on time. It opened on that very day that the president of the country set 5 years before it was realized. But it opened, in fact, in a very small scale. This is what we recommended. I understand. I told him, I understand that you need to open this airport. But the good thing is that there was a ceremony with everything that you can imagine. Everybody was happy. And then and there was operation, but very minor and very uncomplex. Yeah, it was regional flights without any connections. And the real opening then happened in the first week of April after this, 6 months after this. Yeah. And this is what you would do then. There's always ways. And I can tell you that if the airport is open, and the opening an airport doesn't, I mean, if you are really take it very by the word, does not necessarily even say that you need flights. Once the infrastructure is open, usually the political pressure is relieved, and then you can continue your work. I understand that it does not work everywhere, but usually this can help.
Yeah, thank you for this, Herbert. And I think that and Stefan, I wish you a healthy fight between operations and technical and maintenance. As you know, at the airports, it's always the case. But so long it's healthy, then it's okay.
Financial as well.
Yes,
and the finance as well.
Of course. And then one element that Herbert just touched was the political element. The pressure from government to open puts added pressure. There is, Herbert, a question from the audience. Ahmad Al-Mustafa said that, okay, the examples that we provided relates to terminal, of course. What happened when you have a project like the runway taxiway or apron project, which is nothing to do with the terminal? So does ORAT works in a similar manner?
It works with everything. It even works if you want to start a bus stop, to be honest. You can apply this methodology to every infrastructure. Yeah. Depending on complexity, it's more complex or not. I mean, opening a bus stop or making an ORAT for your townhouse is possible, but not necessary to this degree. But of course, you want to do trials. I mean, if you open taxiways or runways, you need to try the integration of all systems that are involved. You need to check on lightning. You need to check if the stop bars work properly, etc., etc. Yes, the ORAT methodology applies to everything that you want to open that has certain technical complexity.
Thank you, Herbert. So I think we'll have to sum up. Maybe what I'll ask you, and from where I started, and without anything behind the mind, I mentioned Hong Kong Airport, I mentioned London Airport, and there is the Berlin Airport, high-profile airports, mega airports, and the team behind, they were stars. You know, they were great teams. But then why on D1, on the D day, it failed, despite having ORAT and so on?
There is a multitude of reasons for this. Sometimes the ORAT didn't set the right accents, and this is what I said earlier, the participation and dedication from the stakeholders was not properly managed. Yeah, this is something I have never had a failed ORAT project. Of course, I faced difficulties. But we never, from our side, from Munich, we never had an unsuccessful opening. But of course, we had issues, and this mainly depends not on the approach that you have, if your approach is serious and thorough, but it then comes into practice. Yeah, you don't have the dedication and the buy-in of all stakeholders to the level that they said. I mean, Muscat Airport, for instance, it opened and it was a mess. Why? Because ground handlers, they were in there's only one ground handler. So the ground handler, and we did the ORAT, he was with every trial, but it was always the same 20 people. Of course, we told them, hey, this is not, you don't do the trials for us, you do them for yourself. But they kept, because they were just, I mean, not sensible, or they wanted to make it very easy for them, they always sent the same 20 people. So on the opening day, people were going in the baggage handling system with diesel-powered trucks. They were not aware of mainly the ground handler. They were not aware of the roadway system, etc., etc. Things like that. So it's sometimes the fact that despite your best efforts, you are not able to get the buy-in of everything. But again, then you need a strong opening support. And we flew in, I think, 5 or 6 ground handling experts for the opening to help them. And I can tell you that in this particular project, it took weeks or several months. I think I was involved 3 or 4 months after the opening to get ground handling on track. And it was really tough. It was hard because also you have, depending on culture, you have political issues, you have cultural things that you don't really understand because the culture is rather far away from you, and people don't talk about this with you. But yes, it can be a number of reasons, mainly not proper participation and compliance with FAM and trials. This happens.
Yeah, thank you, Herbert. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much for this very informative session. We during this webinar we had 51 participants at some point in time. I'm so pleased that even at the end we are 45 participants, which is testimony of the importance of this subject. So once again, Herbert, thank you very much from ACI Africa and from all of us.
Pleasure, and my regards to the team of ACI Africa, as well as to all participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Herbert. So, dear participants, the recording of this webinar will be made available. So we will send you an email with the link. Thank you very much for your presence, for your participation, and see you next time for another ACI Africa webinar. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Very much.